So justice. One thing I should say right away is when I started by looking up references to justice in scripture and discovered that, I wound up finding that a lot of times in English language translations, the word for justice is translated as righteousness. So if you think in a kind of broader sense of the term, we're probably better off. I looked it up. One always turns to the authority of a dictionary. Justice is the idea that people are to be treated impartially, fairly, properly, and reasonably. But as we well know, all these words are wonderfully malleable. And so I brought in the usual array of oddities of picture and cartoon to illustrate the point. So Maria, if you give me my first picture here.
All right. Let me share.
Just leave the pictures up until we get through with them because they all go pretty quick.
Yep. Let me share my screen. Give me a sec. And I want to go. Hang on. Nope.
Nope.
Hang on, I'm getting there. Ah. Here. Okay. Thought I already had this pulled up. I'll just make it bigger while you talk.
Well, I think everybody can recognize it. I just thought with the idea we could say, among other things, justice could be a title. And I suppose one could even be a chief justice, as in this example. And it is interesting that in United States courts, only members of the Supreme Court are addressed as justice. All others use the title judge. I don't know what they do in Texas. Each state sets its own law about the title assigned to a judge. All right, go ahead and give me since you're eager to show me the iced tea one.
No, I was trying to move this thing over so I could get to the. Okay, that's fine. It's going to do it this way.
So we've got, I just thought this was really cute. Just iced tea or Justice Tea. And the other one is a clothing store, which Maria tells me actually exists. I'd never heard of it.
Yeah, I'm sure Nancy, having you taken your daughters here.
Oh, yes. We've spent many, many dollars at Justice. It's been a while. That was kind of the.
Is there any connection between the name and the idea, or is it just they thought it was a nice word?
That is a great question, Paul. I was so busy at the time, I didn't even bother to check.
Probably most people thought, who cares?
Yeah, they liked the clothes, and they were affordable, and that was in probably late elementary school when that was.
Yes. Okay. And I was just so focused on getting in that store and getting what they wanted and getting out, I didn't even think about what the name meant.
Exactly.
So that's fine. Okay, it's also could be a subject of humor. So give me my first Calvin and Hobbes, which I think is wonderfully to the point. I give you a chance to read it. Calvin, the criminal, is about to face justice.
Yes.
I don't suppose it's proof anything, but I thought it was cute.
It is cute.
And I have another one because we may joke about it, but when we know it, when we see it. So even though we joke about it, we know it exists and we know it's important, and so important in the United States, we have a whole government department devoted to it, at least in principle. I don't want to get into politics, but go ahead, give me the government seal. There it is. But as you well know, the Department of Justice is really the Department of Law. They may or may not deal in justice, but they do deal in law. And law is not the same thing as justice. And for here, I have a Dilbert cartoon, which will take a minute to read, but I think it's really cute.
Come on.
I love that line. We're
You're-
using the law to keep justice away.
Using the law to keep justice away. I feel
I'm
sick.
sick. That's
That's
not-
That's
how
how
you-
you know it's working. That's my favorite.
Oh my gosh. That's the best, Paul.
So it may be that only in the realm of superheroes do we really get justice. And give me my Batman Superman. You have to look at the subtitle to appreciate it.
Mm.
There's actually a very distinguished professor of law at the University of Michigan who's written a wonderful book about superhero movies and how they embody our sense of justice and the tension between the idea of law, which is what they teach in law school, and justice, which is something we all believe in. I think we have our own understanding of, but doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the law. And
But there's a lot of movies that do that. Like you think about The Fugitive and movies where somebody is wrongly convicted and then they find a way to justice.
and so it's the there's Superman or Batman or I don't know, there who knows how many thousands of superheroes there are. But we look to them for justice because we don't have any illusions that it's available, or at least we are not entirely confident that it's available through the system of justice. In any case, as with the other cardinal virtues, justice has a long history as a secular idea. It's the central theme of Plato's Republic. I don't know how many of you had to read that in college, but you remember it starts with or Socrates asking his buddies, what is justice? And then he proceeds to explain for the next 300 pages. And so philosophers from Plato to Aristotle to Cicero to John Rawls in our own time have thought to fully understand it. I don't, do any of you know who John Rawls is? Does that name ring a bell for any of you?
I know who he is, but I've never read his. I know he wrote a theory of justice.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter. I was just curious. He's not surprisingly is a professor at Harvard, and he taught, I don't know whether he still does, but for many years he taught what was the single most popular course among Harvard undergraduates on the nature of justice and what it is. And he's become the leading contemporary theorist of justice. But I'll spare you the details mainly because I don't understand them. But, for further information, look up John Rawls at Wikipedia. Generally, justice reconciles and assures competing claims of individuals and groups, and we have a traditional symbol for it. So if you'll give me the statue of justice.
While she's looking, I'll just say, if you're interested in looking his name up, it's my memory is it's Rawls.
Yep.
That the one?
Yep, that's it. I think we all recognize that. I mean, this is one of those statues. It was fascinating when I just started looking for a picture of it. And then, you go to Wikipedia and you punch image and you get literally hundreds of pictures of a statue like this. And as I looked at the little subscriptions, it was just amazing that there is no part of the world where you don't see this. This really is the traditional iconographic symbol for justice that you could find in a courtroom in Australia or Africa or South America or, anywhere. It's not just Europe or the United States. And of course, it's an iconography that represents the ideals, the justice, the scales of justice that show her balancing claims, and the sword of justice, which will enforce her decision. And of course, that she's blind. She's blindfolded, so that she can't see who she's deciding between. She can't play favorites, even if she wanted to. So it's a marvelous, evocative image, and not surprising that it's so popular. But of course, justice comes into the Christian tradition in a slightly different sense. So I thought I'd start with a religious joke. This may or may not strike you as funny, but I looked up justice jokes and found one about ministers and justice. So I'll share this with you just for the fun of it. Once there was a preacher who was an avid golfer. I think probably a lot of jokes start this way. One Sunday was a picture-perfect day for golfing. The sun was out, there were no clouds in the sky, and the temperature was just right. The preacher was in a quandary as to what to do, but ultimately the urge to play golf overcame him. So he called an assistant to tell him that he was too sick to preach and could not come to church. And then after he hung up, he packed up his car. They drove 3 hours to a golf course where no one would recognize him. And happily he began to play the course. Now an angel was watching all of this, and he was quite disturbed. He went to God. He said, "Look at that preacher. He should be punished for what he is doing." God nodded in agreement. The preacher teed up on the first hole. He swung at the ball, and it sailed perfectly through the air, landed right on the green, and rolled right into the cup. A 250-yard hole-in-one. He was amazed. He was excited. The angel was shocked and dismayed. He turned to God and he said, "But I thought you were going to punish him." God smiled and said, "Think about it. Who can he tell?" Anyway.
Oh, Paul. Oh, that was good.
I am really sorry. I knew the punchline was going to be.
That is so
Tell
good.
anybody about it. I love that.
Well
I'm sure
done.
there are variations on it too,
Oh,
but I couldn't find one with a rabbi and a priest and a minister, so I went with that one.
Can I interject with a golf story that's apparently real? It's not, doesn't have anything to do with justice per se, but apparently there was a national tournament being held in Dallas one summer. And it was so hot that somebody reported that they overheard two guys leaving the golf tournament saying, we're going to go to mass because if hell is anything like this, I don't want to be there.
Is that a golf joke or a Dallas joke? I don't know.
It's a double joke.
Anyway, humor aside, what the joke brings through is the idea that there is justice. Christianity is a one of the cardinal virtues. It's a core value of Christianity. We are told in Deuteronomy very simply, God is just. Moreover, remember the prayer of Amos. Let justice roll on like a river, righteousness like a never-ending stream. So it's something we as Christians have to consider. There are multiple ways of defining it. I'm trying to be consistent here. I looked it up in the Episcopal Dictionary of the Church. And it says, justice is the perfection of the whole in which parts are fairly balanced in relationship to the whole. In Christian moral theology, justice is the quality or habit which perfects the will and inclines us to render to each other and to all what belong to them. It is the mean between selfishness and selflessness. And it's often equated with charity, because charity is the way in which we give to those who deserve more what they have not already gotten.
Can you read the very first part of that again? There was something really profound there.
Oh, well, it must be something with quotation marks then. Justice is the perfection of the whole in which the parts are fairly balanced in relationship to the whole. That's the
That's what it was.
That's the
Episcopal.
Episcopal definition, or the Episcopal dictionary. I don't know how official the Episcopal dictionary is. Nancy, do you know, does it have official sanction, or is it just something it's been worked up.
I believe that it is officially sanctioned by the national church.
So,
So what this, and maybe you're gonna get into this discussion, Paul, but this definition is fascinating to me because it says it's the perfection of the whole where the parts are fairly balanced in relation to the whole. So it almost says to me, what it does say to me is that you can't see the whole, so you can't see God's justice at work because it's all in relation to this bigger picture. And so I remember one day being reading about like God is just and thinking, where's the justice in that? And I could use a very nasty word, woman who was responsible for me leaving Dell. And the fact of the matter is, I can't see it. I can't see it in relation to God's big picture. So that to me is kind of a overwhelming thing to read. It's like almost like, okay, now I get it. It may never seem fair to me, but it's not my view, it's God's.
yeah, and I mean, all I can say, I mean, this is what anybody else has to say, but to me, whenever I read about justice, the words that come to mind to me are in the Lord's Prayer, "Thy kingdom come." It seems to me justice is something we aspire to. Justice is available through God. It's through God that we understand justice, but that doesn't mean that the world is just or that everything we know that not everything that happens in the world is just, but that's what we're to work for and to pray for. I don't know if that addresses your question or not.
It may not be, because you said we see something as not being just. I think culturally it has a lot to do with what we view as being just and being unjust.
Yeah.
So it depends on the culture and the times that you're living as to how you feel what is just and what is not just. I mean, they beheaded people for wanting to write the Bible in English, and they viewed that as a just thing.
Yeah,
So
well,
it's
indeed,
it's relative actually to your culture.
And that's what that's saying. But Mike, you were going to say something because you show yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that I heard a preacher once make the point that just is not a synonym for fair.
yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
In our eyes, like it's God's eyes, and he sees this whole way bigger picture.
Right.
Like so cool to think about that.
Yeah, and the other thing that I just am struck by is that when you hear these different definitions, and I think maybe one of the cartoons referred to it, is that legality and justice are not synonyms.
No, definitely not.
Mhm.
And sometimes I think some people would like to equate
Yeah.
legality and justice, but things can be legal that just, it's not a it's not a good policy. It's
Yeah,
not
it's
a
like
just
arguing about
policy.
whether slavery is just or something.
Hey, is there a door between the two of you that needs to be closed? Because we're getting crosstalk between the two of you.
I know I closed my door, but I think Paul's getting up to close his door.
No, my door is closed too. I don't know where it's coming from, but it's not coming from us. So
Sorry.
I think it's only coming when you two talk, but that's okay.
well, maybe we just have a natural squeak to our voice.
Maybe that's it.
Anyway, I mean, I think just going on with the idea of the Christian notion of justice, to me, and I think probably to most of us, the specter of a just God is a fearsome prospect. When we pray, we don't pray for justice, we pray for grace. We know that we don't deserve God's grace. It's not the reward for the justice of our lives. The justice is a fearsome thing, and maybe too complicated for us ever to fully comprehend. Maria, if you're going to give me the last slide, I just think there's a famous remark from Thomas Jefferson. And this is the last picture. Oh no, it isn't. We don't. This is from a letter Thomas Jefferson wrote late in life, talking about slavery and the problems it posed for the American Republic. And,
Oh, what about this one, Paul?
well, I want to get to that in a minute. Yeah, go ahead and put it up.
You sure?
Yeah, sure. And blow it up so people can see it a little bit better.
Yeah, okay.
So this leads to the discussion problem I have for you tonight, for us tonight. But anyway, it seems to me as Christians, we pray for grace, we aspire to justice, we have to do the best we can. We are confronted constantly with situations where we have to decide what is justice, what is the right thing to do. And in trying to think about things we might talk about, I was reminded of this celebrated problem. I don't know whether any of you recognize it, but it's what's called the trolley problem. And it's, any of you recognize it?
Yes, it's horrible.
Yes. It's it's something that, you encounter regularly in classes, and for that matter, in philosophical discussions about how to decide between right and wrong and to take a just course of action. So there are a lot of, I'll explain the problem in just a minute, but the bottom line here is, it seems to me, there are a lot of ways to approach this problem, only one of which is Christianity. I mean, you can imagine different ethical systems and different moral systems leading you to different points of view about how to address this problem. But I thought it would be useful for us to go around tonight and talk about how would you, conscious of yourself as a Christian, deal with this problem and see. I'm going to record everybody's vote, and but let me. I won't turn this into higher authority. But anyway, here's the problem. It's a thought problem, and the problem is this: imagine that you are in a railroad yard, and you see a train coming down the tracks, and it's coming to a Y in the tracks. It has to go one way or the other, and you can't stop the train. It's moving too fast. And on the track where it's headed, there are 5 people who will be killed if they're hit by the train. They can't get out of the way in time. And on the other track is another man, or another human being. You know nothing about these people. You don't know who they are, what their gender is, what their race is. You just know they're fellow human beings. But the challenge for you is you have a switch. Currently, we know that the train will hit the 5 people. What will you do? Because if you throw the switch, it will hit the single man and kill him instead. So you have to choose. Let the train keep on its current course and kill 5 people, intervene, accept the moral responsibility for what you're doing, and have it kill the other man. I don't know that there is I'll put it this way, there is no right answer to this question, but there are a lot of different ways of thinking about it. And I'm curious to know what you would do. You also could do nothing, but of course, if you do nothing, then the 5 people will die. Okay, would anybody like to volunteer? You can put us back on the screen now. Who's feeling
I
decisive?
think that decision was once made by Harry Truman
Okay, when was this?
when he decided to drop the bomb.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a good
'Cause
analogy.
he knew how many people would die. And he knew if they didn't do that to try to end that war, many more millions of people, both Japanese and Americans, would have died. So he
Yeah, I mean, let
very,
me
very-
amplify on that, Carol. Carol,
Let me
there
let,
was
let
a-
me let me press Carol to finish answering the question first, then I'll come over to you, Mike. Carol, how would you answer this particular question?
that particular question in the
Yeah. The
well,
trolley problem.
the trolley problem.
Yeah.
I would have to go for the one person.
All right, so one person, and is that in any way influenced by the fact that we're Christian? I mean, is there a religious reason for doing that? What leads you to do that?
Well, I can't say because I am a Christian whether or not that really has any kind of influence on it's one of the lesser of two evil types of things if
Okay,
the decision had to be made. And by not making the decision to switch it, you do make the decision to kill the 5 people.
Yeah.
So
okay, Mike, how about you? Finish. You wanted to say something about the
Yeah, with regard to Carol's first point, part of the decision making, I was reading the history of this, and part of the decision making process that Harry Truman went through was exactly that. And I believe it was his Secretary of State, who I think was Stimson at the time, told him, he says, "Well, Mr. President, what will you say at your impeachment when the American people discover that you had a weapon that would save a million American casualties and you did not use it?"
Yeah, I used to use this issue. I used to teach a course on the Second World War, and we always wrapped up with reading some of the literature about this. As you know, it's a much discussed topic. But going back to the trolley problem, I'd like to hear from both you and Lori, if I could, about how you would decide.
I would agree with Carol.
All right, and for the same reasons.
Yes.
Okay. And Lori, how about you?
Well, it's a shame we don't get to know anything about the people, because if the 5 people were people that were just ordinary people and the one guy to the side was the guy who's going to cure cancer, all bets are off. But we don't know that. And so my thing would also be the one person, because it's really, a Hobson's choice. Neither solution is good. I personally would probably scream at everybody to get off the tracks. And that's my reaction.
But I would
I'm kind of loud sometimes.
Well, I should probably have taken there are literally hundreds of illustrations of the problem, and a lot of them have the bodies tied to the tracks, but they were too detailed for this use. So, okay.
Thank you.
Okay. We don't have as many people today, and everybody's very decisive. Kay, how about you?
Well, one of the things that occurs to me that I think Carol pointed out that I was thinking about when you were talking, and that is that we pray for our sins of omission as well as commission to be forgiven. And I think that's an important point, because whatever happens, if somebody sees something that's that the train's going to hit one side or the other of the set of tracks, not doing anything is doing something, even if it's inaction. And I think that's often I think that's maybe one of the hardest things to think about personally, is not getting involved in something. By not getting involved, sometimes I think sometimes we've done worse than getting involved in doing something that wasn't maybe all that effective. But just by trying to kind of think, well, I'm not doing anything bad because I'm I'm just watching, but just standing by and not acting. And I like Laurie's point about, well, who are those people? But the flip side of that is that every human, we believe, has a soul. And so even if if they aren't going to do anything great, it doesn't mean that they're of no value. But it's hard for me not to think kind of just mathematically and therefore kind of simplistically in this one, that if you're going to have a choice of killing one person or four or five people, it reminds me of the something that happened just within the last couple of years was the guy who was driving and he ran into a farmer's market because he was older and he lost control of his car. He didn't mean to kill anybody, but that didn't absolve him of having killed a number of people. And that's a long way of saying, I hate to come down one way or the other, but I guess I would go for just sadly making it hit the one.
Mike, were you going to add something or?
Yeah, I was going to add that you've probably all heard of instances where military pilots or especially this occurs to, where they've had a major malfunction in a training area that's over, populated areas, and they've got to, this airplane's going to hit the ground in 15 seconds. And which way do you point it? And, they point it toward the least densely populated area possible. So that seems like a very similar choice. And to her comment about, to make a decision or not to make a decision, well, if you recall, Dante reserved the front rows of the fires of hell for people who, in times of great moral crisis, carefully preserve their neutrality. So, by not making a decision is making a decision.
I like that. That's think of Pilate as Pontius Pilate as a good example of that too. Let's see. Is David Gamble there? I never know with no picture, so that can you go ahead?
Yeah, I'm not able to get my camera to work. I tried, couldn't tell you why. I guess I would have to go with the one person. The problem for me that I see is no matter what I do, I'm actually playing God. And it's just I agree, there is no right answer for this. It just comes down to fewest number of lives lost.
Great. Let's see. How about Jan Duggan? Want to play too?
I guess I would have to go with the one person saving the lives of the others. I don't have any other information or whatnot to make any better decision than that.
Okay. Turns out to be a simpler problem than I anticipated. How about Nancy?
Okay, so yes, I'm, I guess, kind of in the same camp as everyone else in terms of choosing to kill the one versus the five. And I guess my reasoning is I'm saving not only those 5 lives, but also the exponential ripple effect of the lives that they touch. and again, back to Lori's point, we don't know anything about any of these people, but 5 lives lost is going to impact exponentially many, many more people than 1 life lost. Statistically speaking, probably. So if I'm standing at the switch and I have to make a decision, I'm also thinking I'm in the head of the one person on the track looking at the 5 people over there and going, it makes more sense for that guy up there to flip the switch so the train hits me. So 5 people live. I don't know.
Yeah.
If you were the one on the track, what would you want?
I'll just add, thinking about the numbers thing, that in the bulletin recently, there was mention of many people with the same last name. And I'm not saying it's the same as the trolley analogy that Paul's talking about, but it did make me think, was there some tragedy that all those people had the same last name, or was it somehow had come to the church's attention that many people with the same last name had died within relatively recent time? And it's not that I don't care when I see individual names of people who have died, but seeing a number of people, or when you read about if a family is wiped out in an auto accident, or the house burns down and there are all these people, they don't all have to be rocket scientists for me to feel bad. That a bunch of people died.
Okay. I think there are 3 of us left. Kim.
Unmute myself. I'm gonna have to go with everybody else and flip the switch to save the larger number of people. And I enjoyed everybody's comments, and I agree with Nancy about, I didn't even think about it, but the exponentially more people that'll be affected by potentially those 5 versus the 1. So yeah, I think that's where I'm gonna have to go.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
Yeah, I'm with the group. There goes the lone guy.
Can you elaborate a little in terms of how you think about it in terms of?
I just pictured myself standing there seeing this train coming fast, thinking in a split second, if you had to decide, like you couldn't, there was no luxury for time to reason it out. This is happening and it's happening fast. I feel like my mothering instincts would say, oh my gosh, look at all those people, and just do it to try and protect. It's like a mothering instinct to try and protect as many people as possible.
Yeah, I like that. That's cool.
Yep.
Okay, Maria.
So I kind of like to believe that I would make a decision, but I feel like I'm so lacking in self-awareness and just in ability to react quickly and not be stunned, that I would probably just stand there and stare at them. And then here's what I imagine happening. But in this, I'm with Craig. I go, oh my gosh, what should we do? I don't know what to do. Craig jumps up, he flips the switch, and I kneel down and start praying for that one person. Like, that's what I think would happen, because I would be too, like, caught up. Or I'd like to think that if I were better able to be present in a moment and not panic, that I would see these 5 people that I know and love and say, of course I'm supposed to save them and flip it. And because when I was thinking about how I would do it, if I didn't just kind of freeze and panic, I was thinking, well, what if that were this person, this person, this person, this person looking at me saying, Maria, yelling at me, Maria, flip the switch. Like, hopefully, I'd like to hope that I would do something as opposed to standing in panic. Or maybe I would just stand there and start praying for God to stop the train. Wasn't a very definitive answer, but I guess it's leading with
No,
the
I
rest
don't
of the
think,
group.
I don't say it's a definitive answer. I think
That was I liked your answer. That was really a very honest and deep thought answer.
Well, I had a lot of time listening to y'all. I'm like, I'd like to think I would act.
But
know-
but it does raise for me, you know, when Laurie mentioned if it was somebody who was going to cure cancer. I mean, the flip side and thinking about what Chris said about the mothering instinct. I mean, what if the one person was your child and the other people were people you didn't even know who they were? I mean,
Yeah,
then that stacks things in a
there are
totally
many
different way.
variations on this, including the one person is going to cure cancer, or the 5 people are all in their 90s and the one person is a baby, and you know, there are
Yeah, I mean, but
obvious,
especially if you know, I think sometimes it's, I mean, people, Chris mentioned mothering, but I think just in general, it's when you have a relationship with somebody that trying to help them is more important than, I mean, for better, for worse, we're supposed to help the poor, but appeals that come from nonprofits where they show you, here is someone like Habitat for Humanity who just got a house because they did the work on the house and they, you know, contributed their time. And the fact that you have contributed to Habitat means that they're going to have a house. That to me is a better appeal than somebody sending me a brochure that says we've built, you know, 10 houses. I mean, if you could personalize something.
Well, think about this, you guys. That's exactly what God did. Like, that was his son, Jesus, and he pulled the switch and let Jesus die for our sins.
Yeah, I frankly, I avoided that issue. You know, this leads into the discussion of the doctrine of atonement, and I just didn't want to go there. But one of the reasons, you know, the argument that God's justice demands that somebody pay for the sins, and that God graciously did it himself, but you know, that God is a just God who demands payment for sin. Is a pretty sobering way to look at this whole issue too. And I appreciate you bringing it up, but I'll plead guilty to having avoided it just because I thought it would.
Well, I watched this. I was I'm doing this Bible study on Monday nights with my neighborhood, and it was on the Beatitudes. And here's the vision he painted that I can't get out of my head. He said, you're standing before God and God's, you know, demanding justice. And he's saying, you did this, you did this, you did this, you did this. And he said, or do you want to stand before God with Jesus at your side and have him say, you did this, you did this, you did this, and have Jesus say, I covered that with my blood. And that was one of the best images like that I've heard recently of God's mercy and justice and Jesus's sacrifice. So that's what made me think of it.
Oh, it's a great, much appreciated. Mike, were you going to add something to?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on something that Chris and Kay mentioned about, you know, the viewpoint of the single person standing on the track. And there, again, forgive me, it's another military analogy, but from, you know, World War II and Korea and Vietnam, there was no shortage of medals of honor given to people who threw themselves on grenades to save their buddies.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's why I was very careful to design it in such a way that you can't throw yourself under the tracks, which is, I suppose,
Yeah.
the right
But
answer.
Mike, thank you for sharing that. That seems to be a powerful thing for you, and I appreciate you sharing that visual of the ultimate service to our country.
Let me just say, I feel I should play too, and I don't. I think I'm the only one who is gonna say this. Is probably more. I am the only one who would not throw the switch, and it's not because of my sense of right and wrong. It's of my, as one of you put it, I can't bring myself to play God. And, choosing who dies is, I mean, I would like to, intellectually, I'm where everybody else is. And if you're interested, this has been used thousands of times in many different study scenarios, and overwhelmingly people, something like 90% of people faced with this will go the way we did. But I just know in myself that there's something about, if I were in that situation, I don't know that I would be paralyzed or fearful, but of playing God, but I don't think I would have the strength of character, if that is what it is, to throw the switch. I wouldn't want to face the families of the 5. I wouldn't want to face the families of the 1, but in some sense, at least I would say I didn't do anything, which in this case is no defense at all.
A thought crossed my mind while we were talking. What about the engineer in the train?
Well, at least in our scenario, there is no engineer. He's had a heart
Oh,
attack.
there's not?
Yeah. And it
Somebody-
doesn't matter because he didn't have a choice anyway.
Oh,
It's the
okay.
guy that's doing the switch.
Okay. Well, I know, but I'm wondering if you were the engineer of that train and you didn't throw the switch, would not the engineer say, why didn't you throw the switch? I would have only killed one person.
Yeah.
Because the train actually is the one doing the killing. Or the
Well, of course, this is pretty common. X number of people every year are killed because they tried to beat a train across the tracks. And almost in every case, the engineer will say, I hit the brakes. But of course, you hit the brakes, the train doesn't stop for another, it takes that long to stop a train at speed.
Miles.
And, you're not going to, but I agree. Anyway, I hope you found this suggestive, if not illuminating.
Oh,
And
yes. Thank you, Paul. I'll have nightmares now for.
If you want a comedy version of this, I can't remember which episode it is, but in the one of my favorite series about good and evil, The Good Place.
Oh, I love that show.
One of the episodes restaged this problem in terms of the characters of the show, and it's very funny, if somewhat gruesome. That's
But
it.
something
And
that's
we have
maybe,
plenty of time for prayers, and
can
look forward
I
to you
just
all next
add
week.
something that's thinking about something that Mike said that's a different, not a sad version, but for somebody saving somebody kind of inadvertently. I had an uncle who was a pilot, and he was flying a plane through the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and he was coming, and he was going to visit my mother, and he asked the people on the runway at the Naval Air Station to blink the lights. And he realized that was a good thing that he asked him, because otherwise he was going to land on a highway. He had misjudged. And thankfully, he said he was so glad that he had asked them to blink the lights, because his plane would have come roaring down. and thinking about, how long it takes you to stop. I mean, if you're trying to, even just stopping a car going 30 miles an hour, you can't stop that quickly.
Wow.
So
were you saying, Paul, transition to prayer requests?
Yeah, we're done.
Yes. So I guess the only thing I wanted to kind of leave it with is that we, like, just to for me, it was so reassuring to remember that we're all gonna fall short of it when we meet our time of justice, and that yet Jesus is standing there saying, I covered that with my blood, and that's because God flipped the switch and let Jesus stand in front of us. And so just forget about don't have nightmares about that, Nancy, about the decision, Nancy. Think about how God flipped the switch for us, for and he would have done it for just one of us. So anyway, Kay, I already have you on my prayer list, so we know you need healing and guidance for the
Maria,
search.
turn off your recording, please.
Thank you. Nancy, I don't know what I would do without you, seriously.
Well, between me and Carol, we keep you straight.
Yes. Okay, where is pause, stop recording. There we go. Okay.